Hey, it's Jennifer Jones. Friends call me JJ. This platform is designed for the new leader who wants to become a great leader in the modern workplace. Over the last 15 years, I have learned valuable lessons that I want to share with you to get you there ASAP. When the leader gets better, we all get better. Happy Monday! You're tuned in to JJ's Virtual Leadership Coffee Chat. If you haven't already, go grab that favorite latte or a spot of tea. A glass of wine is all right with me. Remember, you can always push pause. Let's go. Hey guys, so welcome back. We have been talking about transitioning from priorities into deliverables. And one of the things we've spent some time walking through is what I call are the times where you're spending one-on-one time with your employee in a small bites or your support and accountability meeting. And you keep hearing me say these two words: you need to support and equip your people. One thing that I've encountered over the past few weeks is just this dynamic of what does support look like? And I really want to tackle the question, is micromanaging always bad? So there are basically three types of people that you manage. And the reality is that over the course of your management, they vacillate between these three different types of people based on their level of experience. So the first person is really someone that's green, brand new to the role, brand new to the function, doesn't really know the ins and the outs. And so they require a lot of your hand-holding, a lot of your time. Then there's this other individual on the other spectrum that is well experienced, doesn't really need a lot of guidance on the work, maybe more support to get the work done. So those are the two bookends, and I'll be quite frank in saying that those are probably the two easiest folks to manage. Either someone that you know that you're going to be training, I'm putting air quotes up, and spending a lot of time one-on-one with them, telling them what to do, what the steps to take, right? That's that really, really green person, super easy. And then you have the person that's really experienced, and you're like, listen, what do I need to get out of your way so you can do great work? Very easy. So think about them as the difference between I'm in the work with you, or what I like to call sausage making. You guys have heard me say that before. If you don't remember what I mean by sausage making, is none of us really want to be involved when people are making sausages, right? The meat and the seasoning and all that process. But really, it's in that moment of sausage making where you're influencing the recipe, you're influencing the outcome. And so being in the sausage making really helps to improve what happens in the end. On the other end of the spectrum, it's empowering someone. Listen, I'm going to empower you to make the right decisions. I'm going to empower you to go do the work, and I'm going to get out of your way. So again, those are kind of the bookends of experience. Where this is really challenging for many, many leaders, and it takes experience and a lot of trial and error, is that individuals that's kind of in the middle, right? They're not green, so they know enough about the job to be dangerous, but they're not overly experienced or fully equipped to do the work without your support. And so it's like the question you're constantly asking is, where do I land? How do I support this individual that is in the middle? Okay. So one of the things that I want to really tackle is this conversation around micromanagement, right? And is micromanagement always bad? I think it's bad. It's seen as bad because the context is negative. When you hear micromanaging, like skin crawls, right? But the reality is I look at micromanagement very much like sausage making. It's really getting in the weeds, getting your hands dirty in the work and supporting that individual one-on-one. So it's all about a mindset. So if you think about going back to our planning process, if you have an individual that's like, for example, never launched a product, or someone that has never discontinued SKUs, you might find yourself with someone that's a bit more experienced getting in the sausage making. That does not mean that you're micromanaging. That means that you are supporting and equipping that individual, okay? The other side of that spectrum, where you talked about like the person that's fully equipped, we're calling that empowering the individual. Sometimes when we think the individual is more experienced, sometimes we actually don't support them and they actually need our support. And that's called an absent leader. And there's nothing worse than an absent leader. Someone that has empowered someone to do work that they are actually not equipped to do. And so it is important for you as a leader to figure out constantly where your individual is at. And so one of the things that I tend to do in my leadership is, one, I try to really assess the individuals where they're at on that continuum. Are they really, really green? Are they really, really experienced? And based on that, start out my journey with them, assuming those two bookends, right? But if I'm finding that the individual is responding to the task, able to get them done pretty quickly, I'm going to get out of that micromanaging / sausage making realm and quickly begin to move over to the continuum of empowering them. But if they are not necessarily delivering on the commitment, or not delivering what I would expect to be good work, I'm going to come back over, instead of fully empower them, I'm going to come back over and get my hands dirty in the work. It is really important that you, as a leader, figure out where your folks are at. But here's what often happens, and I've seen this pretty often, especially with folks that are newer leaders. Because we have been scarred by the word micromanager, right? 9 times out of 10 when I'm in interviews and I ask a question about what type of leader someone wants or does not want, micromanagement comes up every single time. I don't want someone that's going to micromanage me. So because that is such a negative connotation, sometimes new leaders abandon their role and begin to be an absent leader because they don't want to micromanage. So then you end up finding an individual that's missing the mark because you're absent in the work. Because you're so scared to micromanage that you're actually doing the exact opposite, where you're leaving them without support. Think about your children, right? I sure hope that if you have a teenager, that you're not still feeding them, right? Because over time, they've been able to be empowered and equipped to feed themselves. However, you are spending more time maybe coaching them on how to interview for jobs or how to prepare for a resume. In that scenario, you're getting in the sausage making. You're getting your hands dirty in the work. So again, just like in parenting, it's very much like in leadership. You have to meet someone where they're at. So I'm really going to challenge you all to really think about not micromanaging, but is this the time for me to get my hands dirty? Okay. And that might be perceived as micromanagement for you, but it actually might be support for your individual. On the flip side, really check when you are like fully empowering someone and you don't have a method to check the progress of the work. What might be seen as empowering, you might be perceived as absent, and your individual feels like they're not being developed, they're not being supported, they're left out to fend for themselves, and that is the last place you want your folks to be. So to sum it all up, I'm really going to challenge you to think about this dynamic of supporting your people as a continuum. And you have to be willing to meet your folks where they're at. And what might be perceived to you as micromanagement actually might be the support that individual needs. And so that means you're going to have to be willing to get your hands dirty, but also be sensitive to the fact that when they've got it, get out the way and empower them to do the work. But in your empowerment, don't leave them by themselves, because then you become absent. And that is, again, the lack of support that individual might need. So until next week, happy leading. Bye.
I gotta keep my phone